Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, I'm Alda Aulia Rahmi, an English education student at Universitas Pekalongan. And now in Konferensi Ilmiah Pendidikan 2025 Universitas Pekalongan, I would like to present my article with the title Code Switching Used by Economic Department Bridging Language Barriers for International Class Students. First, the abstract. So, as an international language, English is often being taught or used in schools or universities in Indonesia. There are also some bilingual or international classes where the teaching and learning process mostly use English as the main language. And in this class setting, students are usually expected to communicate using English and understand the learning material taught in English. And this study investigates the use of code switching in international classes of the Faculty of Economic and Business, focusing on factor and code switching and its effect on students' understanding. This research used a descriptive qualitative method involving open-ended questionnaires, and the participants were 49 international class students from the second and fourth semester in Universitas Pekalongan. This results show that factors of code switching by students were limited English proficiency, difficulty understanding economic terms, and the need to emphasize important points. And code switching actually helps students understand complex materials and then improve vocabulary and feel more confident, but it also gives challenges such as slowing down the English development and causing confusion when overused. Overall, code switching played an important role in bridging the language barriers in bilingual or multilingual classroom settings. And then after that, the introduction. Code switching often happens in conversation, especially when the people are bilinguals. Bilinguals here means the people that can speak more than one language, like two or more. Usually two. And then Morrison 2025 defines code switching as changing or switching from a particular code of speech to a different code based on the social setting or conversational situation. And Pekalongan University recently launched the International Class Program in the Economic Department, and the students are still from the local people from Pekalongan, so they understand English, but they're not really fluent at it. So they have the language barriers when studying the material in the class. The language barrier is when there is a lack of common language that makes people limit their conversation or understanding by using verbal communication, according to Friedman 2023. And this study have proposed two purposes, that they were to analyze factors of code switching and its effect of code switching on students' understanding. The research methodology. So this research used a descriptive qualitative method involving open-ended questionnaire, and this research was conducted in 2 international classes in Universitas Pekalongan. So the subjects of this research was 49 international class students from the second and fourth semesters, and data collection techniques involving instruments open-ended questionnaires. And the questionnaires was distributed to students to gather insights about the factor and effects of code switching on their understanding. Questionnaire responses were grouped into thematic categories reflecting effects of code switching as experienced by students. And then the findings and discussions. We have two findings here, the factors and the effects of code switching. The first one is the factors of code switching. So after the grouping, there were 8 factor identifies. The first factor is limited vocabulary and English proficiency. For example, the example of students' respond here is not really fluent in English, still beginner level. And then the second factor is difficulty understanding academic or economic terms in English. And the third factor is lecture explains complex theories and calculation. And then to understand material better. And next, to emphasize important points. And then number 6, students shows confused facial expressions. And then number 7, to get more focused and less anxious. And then the last one, students feel more comfortable because of first language. And these are the example of the students' responses. The discussions is that limited English vocabulary and proficiency, especially when it comes to academic or economic terms. So some students were already quite proficient in English, but others were not. And these students are lacking of vocabulary, so they need to do code switchings. And then complexity of the material, particularly regarding theories and then formulas or calculation, which allowed the students to understand the material better. And it could also involve learning about topics related to such as the pawn shop, sliding rates, bond value, and etc. And then the lecturer often used code switching when emphasizing important points in material or giving some instructions for assignments. In this international management class, the lecturer usually gave instructions in English before switching to Indonesian. And when students seem confused during the learning process, the lecturer immediately switched the language so that they could understand the materials. Moreover, the lecturer sometimes needed to use code switching so the students could more focus and felt less anxious in the class. And students felt more comfortable when switching to Indonesian language because it's their first language, their native language. So they feel more relaxed about it, especially the first year students. The second finding is the effects of code switching. There are also 8 effects identified here. The first one is helps understand difficult material, especially calculation or abstract topics, and then improve new vocabulary, especially the economic terms. And number 3, increases focus and engagement in class. Number 4, increases confidence of students because of feeling supported. Number 5, helps the presentation and question and answer sessions. Number 6, can make English development slow down, and then causes confusion when switching too often. And the last one, considered less effective by students who prefer full English. And then the discussion is code switching help comprehension and vocabulary learning because it facilitates a better understanding of difficult material such as calculations, and then when defining some theories, giving examples, and etc. And then it also improves engagement in class, increase the student confidence, and engage interaction during the presentation because the students feel it can reduce their anxiety and help them become more confident in expressing their opinions. And some students also thought that as international class students, they need to immerse themselves in environment that supported their use of English for like the class matter. So these students believe that relying heavily on the first language or too much doing code switching can make their ability to overcome the language barrier slowly. So the students also feels sometimes confused when there are too much code switching because they don't they don't know where to put their focus because the code switching was too much. Moreover, some of them mentioned that it was okay to do more code switching into Indonesian language, especially by the first year students. However, for the third years or more, the students should use more English rather than Indonesian language. Then the conclusion. So the findings of the study reveal that various factors made by the students using code switching international class. These factors were limited English vocabulary and proficiency, difficulty understanding academic or economic terms, and then complexity of the material and the need to create a more relaxed classroom atmosphere. Code switching was also often used when lecturers noticed students' confusion or wanted to emphasize important points, and these factors reflect a significant language barrier that students experience in international classes. So code switching also played a significant role in helping students understand complex material in international classes. It helps students understand difficult topics, enhance vocabulary learning, and improve engagement and confidence. On the other hand, too much code switching sometimes led to confusion and slowed down students' English development. Thus, code switching play a role as a bridge to overcome language barrier so that they can understand the material better, but it should be managed so that it won't interfere the students' improvement in English skills. List of references.